everyone. And okay, so I'm just gonna get this out of the way right now because it needs to be said. Which we need to talk about the damn page count of this chapter and the fact that according to the Shonen Jump app, we're getting another chapter next week. And look, I've said my piece on all this in the video I made a week ago. So if you want to know my thoughts on the current situation with Horikoshi, My Hero Academia, all that shit, go check out that video. But all I will say is Shonen Jump. 7 days. Are you being fucking serious with me right now? Like, seriously, okay. If you're not gonna give the man a full month, like with Oda, then at bare minimum, give him 14 days. Again, just the fact there was only 9 pages in this chapter is proof enough that the man is suffering, so let him rest just a little, for the love of God. Like, and I know people brought up to me in my video like a week ago that like there are certain circumstances when it comes to Shonen Jump and whatnot, but seriously, the 7 days is not enough. 7 days is not enough. Like 7 days is the amount of time you have to actually complete a chapter. You need you have to at least complete a chapter. He needed at least 14, honestly. And like for me, the only way my mind rationalizes this is that because My Hero Academia is getting very close to the end, probably, and Horikoshi just wants to make that big final push right now and just get it over with, even if it means he has to push his body to its limits so he can actually finally rest, which, if that is the case, it's commendable, but also scary if you think about what he's putting his body through to get there. And more than anything, once this is all said and done, and if Horikoshi does walk away from this alive even, the one thing that gets to me the most about this is I do with the way supposedly that Horikoshi's body's breaking down and the way it is, I do fear his body will in some way be permanently damaged. Like, no matter what happens, his body in some way is just going to be permanently broken. Something is going to be broke something about him is going to be broke after all this is said and done. And I think that's kind of my biggest fear about it. But okay, moving on from that bit of ugliness though, let's actually get into the chapter itself, which is to say, the main thing with this chapter is that we see Ochiko playing psychoanalyst with Toga, saying she can't fully transform or become who Twice was because she's not motivated by her own feelings, only by the idea of taking revenge on others for what has happened to the people she cares about. And for as corny and schlocky as it sounds on the surface, I do like how there is kind of a foundational basis in what Ochiko is saying here, because it's the idea of revenge is the one thing that can really easily cloud the mind and senses, preventing them from thinking rationally and coherent. Like, Toga's mind right now has been blocked off from those thoughts in place of her revenge, and until she realizes that, her powers are just going to continue to get more and more out of control. And honestly, for as hard as Ochiko is trying to genuinely reach out to Toga this time around, I'm kind of hoping she doesn't succeed, at least not until Toga reaches that absolute breaking point. Like, the point where she's at her absolute helpless and no longer able to even maintain Twice's form, because while the idea of her losing the last shred of the person she cares about could push her further over the edge, I think it would also be at that point where I tend to think that having Ochiko reaching out to her would be at its most effective, because in that moment, despite losing everyone she's cared about, despite being at her lowest point, Ochiko would still be the one to be there, who would still be the one who's there for her. Again, super corny, but I tend to think this might be the only way to make this work, and the best way I can think to end this whole story between the two. Because while I know Ochiko's story and development has been inconsistent in the eyes of some and not really all that engaging, like this feels like the only way to wrap up Ochiko's story in a semi-satisfying way, while simultaneously putting a bow on Toga's as well. Like it feels like the best way to kind of tie these two stories together, I think. With that said, though, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of really missed Sue in this chapter. Like I know I had voiced my concern when this fight began that she'd take the spotlight away from Ochiko's development, but between the chapter's low page count and, in my opinion, getting a pretty pointless recap, like I'm sorry, that recap didn't do anything for the story. It just didn't. The beginning of the chapter did make me realize I'm hoping we actually got to see Sue again, because it's actually been quite a while since we last saw her, although I can't remember either if she's still a part of this battle or playing or helping to fight All for One. Like, I assume she's still around where Twice and Ochiko are, and I think Horikoshi might have just sidelined her until she's ready for her to play whatever role he's planned for her to defeat Toga, but it would have been nice to get a little bit of a setup with her just to establish where on the battlefield she actually is right now. Although with that said, I do gotta say, the way Ochiko is handling herself against the Twice clones in this chapter is pretty epic thing to see, because one thing I am a big sucker for is the idea of a single character facing multiple enemies. Like, it's the ultimate test. For me, that is like one of the ultimate tests of one's ability and how far they can push themselves before they either get overwhelmed or they outlast their opponent. And it is the best way to also showcase the clever ways in which Ochiko can utilize her powers, despite her powers not being extremely combat oriented. Also, I might be reading way too much into it, but I do wonder if Toga telling Ochiko to shut up and she doesn't know anything about her is just an emotional outburst, or if we are going to get a little bit more view into Toga's past. Because in the latter's case, I'm trying to imagine if there's anything more for us to explore Toga we haven't already seen, but I'm imagining imagining what that is Toga about to lay it all bare in front of Ochiko about the life she's lived and all the personal demons she's basically had to battle. Like, it's with Toga, it's always one of those things where only she knows her own pain, but no one else actually knows of the kind of things she's experienced. So I almost imagine with what that does for what that last bit of the chapter does is it's basically Toga preparing to kind of lay bare to Ochiko everything she's experienced. That's kind of what I'm viewing it as anyway. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. Enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share it around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.